Hey, what's going on, good people? It's Gardner Douglas, your Oyster Ninja. Today I'm here with the Bay paddle expert, Chris Hopkinson. And Chris, Chris Hopkinson is going to tell you all about how he's paddling the Chesapeake Bay and doing it for a great cause, of course, to put more oysters in the bay. Hey, what's going on, Chris?
Hey, Gardner, how are you?
I am great, man. I am glad you took time out of your busy schedule, man, and you made time for us.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you.
For sure. No, thank you, man. So how did this whole idea of paddling the bay to, help oysters get back in there? Like, how did this come about?
Yeah, you know what? Honestly, I think I was probably like a lot of people. I never had access to the bay. I mean, most of us don't have a boat. So I got a paddleboard probably 6 years ago, and that was the first time that I could really get out on the water. So, getting on the water is a totally different perspective. I loved being around it, and like everybody else, I loved going to all the, bayside and riverside restaurants and eating crabs and oysters and drinking beer and everything else. But being on the water is just a unique perspective. It's almost like you're able to kind of disconnect from all the stress on land and sort of unwind and really not think about anything too much other than, sort of the peace and calm that's out there on the water most days when it's not so windy and everything. So I kind of tied that with, the story behind oysters. So I never knew that a single oyster filtered 50 gallons of water per day. I think that's amazing and something that more people need to be aware of. And more importantly, I think, the more oysters that we have in the bay, the better the bay is going to be. So, everybody knows the whole tagline around Save the Bay, and it's really hard to kind of understand what that means. Like, what are you supposed to do to save the bay? And I just really believe that oysters can do it. So if we put more oysters in the bay, the bay will essentially save itself.
Yeah, I totally agree, man. Totally agree. So what does a normal day consist for you like? Because this is a big feat. How long is the Chesapeake Bay?
The bay is a little over 200 miles. I'll be paddling about 240,
Wow.
just because I think when they measure the bay, they go down the middle, and I'll be kind of hugging the shoreline as much as I can to
Right.
try to avoid some wind. So yeah, it's going to take me about 9 days. I'll start in Havre de Grace. I'll end in Virginia Beach. I'll stop and sleep in a normal bed
Right.
between each day, and I'll be doing about 30 miles a day. So 30 miles on a paddleboard. It's probably between, depending on the wind, 7 to 10 hours a day of paddling.
Wow, that's crazy, man. That's gonna leave some big arms, man. I'm sure you already built. I'm sure you already building up for that.
I'm pretty lean. My arms are. I look like a wire. So yeah, that helps too. That helps too to stay light, I guess.
Right.
I think if I was doing more, maybe some more interval or sprint stuff, or just going for an hour and a half or so, I'd probably get a little more jacked up. But
Uh-huh.
putting that amount of hours in, it's honestly really hard to like reconsume the calories I'm burning. So, and especially on a paddleboard for 7 hours, it's not like it's easy to stop and have a sandwich. So,
Right.
I'm trying to fuel beforehand. I have some stuff with me when I'm paddling. I try to fuel after, but when you're putting those types of hours in, it's hard to consume enough calories. And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times when you finish like a 7 hour paddle, you're just too tired to even eat. Like you lose your appetite a little bit.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, are you doing this alone? Like, or how is this going down?
I'm doing it alone in terms of like paddling the entire bay. I do think, and I've kind of welcomed people to sort of, pop out
Mm-hmm.
our website is baypaddle.org, and there's a map there of the route that I'm taking. So I think some folks will come out and, if people can paddle for 2 or 3 miles or kayak for 2 or 3 miles or whatever they want to do, that'd be awesome. I'm going to try to avoid being by myself as much as possible. I'll have boat support for sure. And then
Mm-hmm.
I think, you know, as more folks become aware of the paddle, I think some folks will just kind of come out and paddle along for a few miles or however long they can go. just to, kind of get the community involved. And so people feel like they're a part of this journey as well.
Right. So what does, that's got to help, right? Like having other, I guess, people out there to help motivate and that type of thing.
It's definitely having some company is definitely helpful. It's, honestly, it's, a lot of paddling is pretty unique, and being on the water like that is pretty unique because I usually go super early in the morning. And it's not like, if you go running or something, you're on a trail or the road, like you see a lot of cars, you see a lot of other people on the water. There's times where there's just nobody out there. And which is fine. It does get a little lonely. And when it starts to get lonely, you start to get in your head a little bit, right? Like, oh man, I'm tired.
Right.
I don't want to go this far, especially when you know where you have to go to end. You can kind of picture how much further you have. I think having some folks out there, just like you said, to keep me encouraged and just kind of be that support. And, it's always helpful to have just somebody who's along there with you. Again, even if it's just for a few miles, it just kind of reminds you that, you're not, even though you're doing the paddle by yourself, you're not, there's a whole community behind you that's supporting you and supporting the cause, because everybody wants, I think we all want the Bay to be better.
Right.
I'm just trying to paddleboard to sort of help it out.
So what was your first experiences like with oysters, and how did you find out, like, about filtering and everything and how they were good for the ecosystem?
Again, I think like most folks, I guess, oysters were an appetizer, right? They're a great thing to get at restaurants, and I enjoyed eating oysters as much as anybody else. When I was eating them, and I had no idea how important they were or what their real impact or job was, so to speak, in the Bay. It wasn't until I became aware of Oyster Recovery Partnership, that's the organization I'm trying to raise all this money for. And I saw one of their videos on their website, and it's now on the Bay Paddle site, of, they had some oysters in a fish tank filtering water. And
Right.
I actually, my daughter and I, who was in 6th grade at the time, we redid that experiment. So we got a 20-gallon tank, and we picked up some oysters from Annapolis Seafood Market, I think like a dozen. We put them in the murkiest, dirtiest water we could find. Like, you could barely, it was so dark, you could barely see that there were actually oysters in this tiny little tank. And, within 3 hours, I mean, you could see your hand clear across the other side on the outside of the tank. So,
wow.
Like, watching them do their job, and they were opening and closing their shells, and it was really eye-opening in terms of just the impact of, okay, now I get it, right? Saying an oyster filters 50 gallons, that's an impressive number, and then watching them do it is even more impressive.
Right. Totally different, man.
Yeah, exactly.
So how can people, I guess, help or donate, or, what can we do to help support?
Yeah, so donating is the biggest thing. So a $10 donation puts 1,000 oyster spat back in the Bay. So huge return on, $10. 1,000 oysters can have a huge impact on the Bay. So there's a couple ways you can donate. You can go to baypaddle.org, and you'll learn more about the paddle, and there's, donate buttons there. And then you can also just text Bay Paddle to 44321, and that'll send you a donation link where you can make a donation through your phone.
It's cool, man. That's so cool, man. So what are your, like, I'm definitely not pushing any bad luck towards you, but like, what are some of your things that are on there that you like keeping forward minded, I guess, like things to watch out for when you're paddling, or because it's too far out to kind of predict the weather now, right?
Yeah, I mean, as you know, like it's I can't even predict the weather tomorrow, right? They'll say it's raining,
exactly.
and who knows when that rain's going to come in. And on the Bay, like, I could wake up and start paddling, and the wind will be coming from the west, and 2 hours later it's coming from the south. So,
gotcha.
Honestly, I try not to think too much about what I'm starting September 18th. So I try not to think too much about what that'll bring. Obviously it's hurricane season.
Right.
So hopefully we'll avoid those, but the weather is just completely out of my hands. I just put it in God's hands, and we'll see what happens each day.
Nice, man. I'm looking at your site right now, man. I see you got some great sponsors up here.
Yeah, some great organizations have jumped in. Flying Dog Beer, which is actually the largest brewery in Maryland, so they're a big sponsor. They've been a huge help. Salt Life, I'm sure everybody knows Salt Life Apparel, so they're actually going to be coming out with a Salt Life Bay Paddle Oyster Recovery T-shirt, I think at the end of July.
Nice.
So they'll be selling that, and $15 for every T-shirt goes back to Oyster Recovery.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, so they've been really helpful. GoPro sent me some cameras, so I put some GoPros on my board and on the paddle. So yeah, lots of folks have gotten involved. I'm obviously looking for more sponsors. I kind of joke around that, I want to look like a NASCAR driver heading down the bay. So, the more sponsors, the better. And I think it's important that, we all know who supports the bay. Like, I like Flying Dog Beer, but, more importantly, it's, I want to support brands that put money back into the community. And so right now that's Salt Life and that's Flying Dog and some other organizations that are sponsoring as well. I think it's important that I think it's important for brands to support the community. And I think more brands need to do more of it because a lot of them are making a lot of money.
Exactly.
And, you don't always see them in the community. And I think that's where I'd rather see instead of a Super Bowl ad from, Nike or somebody, I'd rather see them, put that money into the community.
For sure, man. So do your kids, what do they think about it? Can you hear me, Chris?
Hey. Hey, sorry, is that better?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, yeah.
So what do your kids think about it?
Oh, they think I'm crazy. So yeah, my kids are 14, 12, and 9. So, they know it's for a good cause. I'm not sure they fully understand like the scope of the effort, but obviously they love the bay, and I think it's good for them they've learned about oysters at a much younger age than I ever did. So even from that perspective, I think it's been a huge benefit for them.
For sure. No doubt, man. Well, that's great, man. If it's anything I can do to, help out, just let me know, man. I don't have Flying Dog funds, but, maybe some of the listeners do or something, So I'm definitely going to be, posting and reposting everything you put out and keeping people update. And maybe we can get on here again and, you can give a update on your progress and what's going on.
Yeah, no, that'd be awesome. Again, like $10 goes a long way, right? $10 is 1,000 oysters. And if there's, other sponsors, I think we have sponsor packages starting at like $500. So right now we've raised about 40,000 and the goal is 200. So 200,000 will put 20 million oysters back in the bay. So that's a huge goal, but like I mentioned earlier, I'd love to look like a NASCAR driver or a car heading down the bay with as many sponsors as possible. And if some companies or brands want to get involved, we'll definitely promote them. I know that I've had some TV interviews on some of the local Baltimore and DC stations, and they've mentioned the sponsors. So there's definitely a good visibility for some brands as well.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Well, hey, Chris, man, appreciate you for taking time out your day, man. I know you're a busy man and with kids and everything, but definitely appreciate you and thank you for, putting oysters in the bay, man, taking that step, doing something that somebody else didn't do, It's big.
Oh, thank you, Gardner. I appreciate that. So we'll share some oysters one day once this whole thing's calmed down a little bit more.
Sounds good, man.
All right. Good talking to you. I appreciate it.
For sure. Appreciate you, man. Be safe.
Likewise. Thanks, Gardner.
All right.
All right. See you, buddy.